Mr. Kofi Sarpong, the chair for the next session. Sir, please, and invite your pen.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to everyone for attending the conference. And this time around, yes, there's a lot of change. I'm representing the whole of Africa, plus our panels are representing the whole of Africa. That is what I'm really, really proud about. After the first conference, I had a lot of questions from my European, African American friends. And then most of the questions were like, they think that everything is about Asia and India and Middle East, and I was doing my best to try and explain to them that it's not about that. But it's kind of like they still were not buying it. So this time round, I said, you know what? I'm going to change the whole narrative and make sure that Africans, we get a very good representation. And then so that they know that, you know, it's there's a lot of differences. So please, I hope we are all going to agree with that. So thank you very much, Dr. Adesenji, for everything. And since we are behind time, I'd like to first of all invite our first speaker, who is Mr. Terence. And Mr. Terence went to Rwanda, and then he actually he went to the ground himself and did a lot of research. So he's coming with a first-hand experience on what actually happened in Rwanda. So please, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is very beautiful. It looks like all.
Actually, it is. It's became infamous for the movie Hotel Rwanda, for those who saw it. So, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will take you through a reflection on the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi 30 years later. This mic is a bit stubborn. So, my name is Terence Michel, and I'm pursuing a Master's of Arts at George Mason University, and I'm also a program officer at the International Republican Institute. Last month, I completed a study abroad in Rwanda. The course was titled Rwandan Transformation, Post-Conflict Policy Making and Development Partnerships. Okay, for historical context, the genocide against the Tutsi began in April 1994, lasting 100 days. The genocide had deep political roots stemming from decades of ethnic tensions and the failure of international interventions. Rwandan Hutu and Tutsi tribes were pitted against each other since German colonization that occurred from 1899 until Belgium granted political independence to Rwanda in 1962. Belgians enforced record keeping around ethnic identity and created a public narrative that cast Tutsi as the elite rulers and Hutu as ordinary farmers. Colonizers elevated and granted political and administration responsibilities to Tutsis and not to Hutus. The first massacres in Rwanda took place in 1959. Thereafter, almost in a regular manner, killing of the Tutsi became a common practice. In the 1960s, the 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s, massacres of Tutsis were common. Among the 1994 genocide planners included the late President Major Juvenal Habyarimana. Massacres against the Tutsi in various parts of the country became widespread in a deliberate effort of ethnic cleansing. The regime used violence to harass and silence the emerging internal political opposition. Hutu extremists also circulated propaganda blaming Tutsi for the country's economic, social, and political context. Against a backdrop of entrenched divisive and genocide ideology, repeated massacres, the persistence of refugees in the diaspora, and the lack of avenues for peaceful political change, in 1987, the Rwandan diaspora created the Rwandese Patriotic Front, the RFP. This is a political party led by Paul Kagame that is in power today. Discontent with their life in exile, a small group of Tutsi insurgents invaded Rwanda in 1990, beginning a violent civil war. After a long period of negotiation that took place in Arusha, Tanzania, the Arusha Peace Agreement was signed on April 4th, 1993. The agreement attempted to establish rule of law, power sharing, repatriation, and settlement of refugees and internally displaced persons, the integration of armed force, and other provisions. In 1994, when a plane carrying the Hutu Rwandan president was shot down, the conflict broke out anew. During my visit to the Kigali Genocide Memorial, I saw the remnants of this tragedy and the immense loss it represents. I asked the tour guide there on how to speak about the genocide against the Tutsi when I fly back to the United States. He gave me an answer in 3 parts. First is to use the correct terminology. Call it for what it is, which is the genocide against the Tutsi. 2, do not bother with number and statistics, as it distracts from the messaging. As a note, this presentation does not have a single number for quantification purposes. 3, use emotions to tell a story. The tour guide mentioned himself that when he comes to the United States, he needs to dramatize and make the story emotional in order to capture the attention. Rwanda has been on a path of healing since 1994. In the months that followed the genocide, there was no easy strategy to bring the killers to justice. Hutu civilians from every level of society had committed atrocities against their neighbors, friends, and even family members. The new Rwandan government estimated that it would take 100 years to prosecute every accused civilian in national court. So, officials determined that the best path forward involved looking into the country's past. Rwanda revived a traditional process for resolving interpersonal conflicts called Gacaca court system, which means grass in Kiwanda. This form of justice is in community settings where trials were held orally and community members directly sought reconciliation from traditional appointed leaders. In the hope of trying perpetrators more quickly, the government adapted Gacaca for their formal courts. So beginning in 2002, Gacaca courts convened every week, and the trials concluded in 2012. When asking different people whether Rwanda has healed, I received different answers. I visited a reconciliation village where perpetrators and survivors lived side by side. The grandchildren of one of the perpetrators and one of the victims were married to each other, as a matter of fact. I asked the perpetrator and the victim if they talk about the genocide still today. They told me at first they did, and now they do not. However, the village chief jumped in and let me know that he discusses matters of the genocide every day, mostly through children's education. So there is no answer on whether the country has healed or not, as ultimately the genocide against the Tutsi is both a collective action and the sum of individual experiences. So, 30 years later, what have we learned? When you travel to Rwanda, the first impression is usually how clean the country is. Afterwards, how traffic rules are obeyed. Rwanda's post-genocide development has been driven largely by political leadership by Paul Kagame, pictured here. He has fostered development policies that are uniquely Rwandan, combining economic growth with community values. He served as vice president of Rwanda from 1994 to 2000, and is president from then to today. The lingering question is what Rwanda's future will look like post-Kagame. 30 years after the genocide, Rwanda has transformed from a place of deep division to one of unity, growth, and reconciliation. However, scars remain, and the country's future will depend on continued education, leadership, and the resilience of its people. Thank you, and that is me with the study group from George Mason University.